All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for a second workshop. We're going to wait a few minutes here, let everybody sign on. We do want to remind everybody that there is a chat function throughout the webinar, so please feel free to fill out questions or any comments, and we will read those likely at the end of the presentation, but if there's some relevant ones, we may stop and read through some of those. And there is a survey this evening that we'll send a link out to. We'll also follow up with that on our project story map, but be on the lookout for that. I'll demo it through the process here. So we'll give just a few more minutes, let other folks sign on, and we'll launch right into it. Again, thanks again for joining us this evening. Just a reminder again, we're going to launch at around 6:05, so if you're joining us, please hold tight. We're just waiting for folks to join before we begin the workshop. All right, we have a couple more minutes and then we'll get started here. And I'm going to hand it over to the city staff, David, to kind of kick us off. And I think at this point, it's about 6:04. We can probably go ahead and get started. David, if you're ready, if you want to just give a brief introduction, and then I can pick it up from there.
Whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay, yep, go for it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second meeting of the Parks Master Plan. I'm happy to be here. I'm David Sosnowski, your Recreation and Community Services Director. We're here at the Parks and Rec office. Don't mind our mess. We're getting ready for our 100-year anniversary celebration. So we have a lot of nice historic photos that all you folks out there watching will get to enjoy real soon. But once again, I want to welcome you. It's our second meeting, community workshop number 2, and the fine folks at KTUA, Matt and Mike here, and Jacob's on the line as well, have been working hard to update you on our progress thus far and get some good feedback. And Sylvia, I just saw you there. Hi, Sylvia. We have our staff here. We have Lori Aguilar, our analyst, who's been working on this project very hard as we go along, and Jake Castillo, who's one of our program coordinators, who's also been a very vital part of the progress and the process so far. So without further ado, again, I just want to welcome everybody that's watching this live or either watching the replay on our Park Master Plan website. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's going to come up. If you guys got your surveys, please make sure you fill them out and make sure you get them back in a timely fashion so we can move this thing forward. And I want to welcome again everybody and thank you again for your time today, and we look forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David, and congrats to the city for 100 years. That's amazing. You know, we're very excited, and this is the second workshop that we're going to share some of the project and some of the things that we've developed here thus far. Just a couple housekeeping things. We do have a survey that we'll be issuing throughout the process here on this workshop. There's also a survey that we mailed out, so that's not to be confused with the survey we're doing this evening. This is more so a visual preference survey. So the survey that's going out in mail is actually a statistically valid survey, and we would encourage those that receive that to please fill it out, send it back. And we're also going to have a kind of a similar survey that we'll put on our website. So you'll be able to fill it out if you do not get that statistically valid survey. So without further ado as well, we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, and we'll get started with the workshop. So a little bit of introduction here. I know David did a great job, but I'll just kind of recap. We are K2A. We are the consultant team that is working on the Parks Master Plan. My name is Matthew Wilkins. I'm the project manager. On the line, we also have Mike Singleton, Jacob, and Sylvia, who will be helping us in the background with some technical issues. If you do hear some voices, that's likely who it is. Along with the K2A team, we have Greenplay, RRC, and Bureau Veritas, who's also helping with this process. Just to recap on the schedule, where we are this evening, September 10th, we're at the second workshop. We're about halfway through some of the draft recommendations and analysis, and we're going to be launching into our third workshop, as well as some of the funding, operations, maintenance, and then going into our final master plan. I'll talk a little bit about it this evening, but part of this process does include getting into some specific parks and looking at those a little bit closer. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the Prop 68 elements to this as well that we're going to be looking at. So the schedule this evening, a little bit of an introduction, which we're in right now. We'll get into the presentation, and then we'll wrap it up with some staff and consultant questions, answers, things like that. Just a little bit of a background on kind of what we're talking about specifically within the body of the presentation. We will go over some of the stakeholder interview questions that we had and recap some of those. We'll talk a little bit about the inventory overview. We will go over the geographic and park acreage gaps and some of the studies we've done there. And then the visual preference survey is what I was mentioning earlier. We'll give a demo on that and then send a link out. And then we'll close with some remarks and some questions, answers, things like that. A little bit of recap on the first workshop. What we went over, we did talk a little bit about the project and some of the goals. We discussed what a park facilities master plan is. We went over some key definitions. We shared the city park sizes and parks in general. And then we discussed what park sheds are. And then we showed the project story map and how to add input into there. And we'll show that a little bit this evening as well. We do want to encourage you that if you did not get to watch or attend that first workshop, there is a live link that's actually in our story map that you can go to and watch that first workshop. Just want to touch on the project goals. Big part of this is really connecting. We want to connect you to your parks, whether it be through trails and open space, or just connecting a little bit more in terms of your input and how they can serve you. We want to include you. We want to include additional space, and we want to maximize the use of existing parks. And we really want to improve them. We want to improve the equity throughout the city, and we want to improve the facilities themselves. So those are the key goals here for the project. And ultimately, we want to hear from you. So that's the big picture goal, and why we're here this evening, and why we're having these workshops and the story maps, all these fun interactive tools. Again, here's the key definitions that we talked about. I won't go into these, but you will hear some of this language this evening. So population-based standards, park sheds, distribution of park services, and 5-minute, 10-minute walk or bike time. I will explain those throughout the process here, so be patient there. Some of the Prop 68 grant funding, as I mentioned, this is the last round of the state's Prop 68 grants. There's about $400 million that's dedicated to parks throughout California. The good thing is there are several parks within your community that will apply for or are eligible rather for the grants. And there are some major selection criteria to point out, which are shown on the right hand of the screen here. So critical lack of park space is one of them. There's significant properties, there's type of projects, and then within the community engagement, this is where your input and what we're doing this evening is really helping towards, but that's community-based planning, employment or volunteer opportunities, partnerships or committed funding, and then there's some operational and maintenance considerations, such as environmental design, public use fees, and hours of operation. And then there's a summary of a project that's a little bit more on the application end, but that will talk about the community challenges, project benefits, and readiness. That is a larger point area there, as well as the community-based planning. So we want to emphasize that your input and all the information that we gather will really help win some grants or get you in a position to win some grants for the parks there. And just to emphasize, the max for one specific grant or application is $8 million. So there is that caveat there, but that is a good chunk of money there. So we'll be working with the city on potentially one or two of these grants, and we'll use all the data here that we receive throughout that process. So we want to go over some of the stakeholder interview information that we received and give an overview of that. The interview input was well received. We had actually a series of meetings that we talked to various folks in the city and various staff members. So the team really interviewed to really understand the operations and opportunities and constraints of the park system. Again, the members that were interviewed were staff. There was about 5 of them. It occurred somewhere in that range between May and early June. And then we interviewed some community members, specifically sports groups leaders, towards the end of June.
And Matt, just to add to that, there will be some additional stakeholder interviews with some more individuals still leading in the future, but this is a summary of what's been completed to date.
Yes, thank you, Mike. That is correct. Yes, so this is a summary to date. There will be some additional interviews there, so please look out for those. So just to recap some of the staff interview input, the city staff did share their vision of taking more recreational programs of neighborhood parks with the goal to make parks a hub at each neighborhood. The second point there is a general need to increase senior programming. So we know that that's a big process or goal there in the city. The city staff felt there was a need to improve communication on programming through implementation of a program guide, and that safety in the parks is a major issue due to homelessness and limited lighting. And this is especially a challenge for youth sports organizations as they play in the parks through the evening. Some of the community input that we received is that additional staff and financial resources are needed to provide updated facilities and expanded programs, that buildings are outdated and need general upkeep and renovation improvements, and that daily upkeep of restrooms should be a priority. Overall, the city does a good job supporting sports throughout the community, but sports groups could use more space and time to host practices and games, and that field scheduling could be more efficient and effective by using an automated field scheduling program, and that more attention should be paid to parks and amenities on the south side of town. I will say I attended each one of these, and in general, everybody was happy with the amount of programs that the city does offer, and they did commend the city for their work. So again, the point of emphasis here is how do we improve, you know? So with that said, we do want to ask some poll questions. There will be 3 poll questions throughout the workshop this evening, and Jacob on the technical end will be issuing those out. And Jacob, are we ready for that?
Hey Matt, yes, we are all ready. So now it's time to wake everybody up and it's time for y'all to, on your phone, on your laptop computer, wherever it is that you are viewing this presentation, you are going to be prompted in just a few seconds for this first poll. And so, Matt, feel free to read off the questions before I launch the poll for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is meant to keep you all awake if I'm putting you to sleep. So the first question is, there appears to be difficulty in obtaining and or reserving fields for use. Which of the following ideas would be your first choice in resolving this issue? Would it be A, digital reservation systems with shared calendars to see availability? So that may be something like a Google Calendar that you can see, you know, there's a sports league on this field. B, would you think that more fields are needed? C, do you think more lighted fields or night play would really help? And then D, that joint use fields with school districts may help. Please pick one of those. And
I'm launching it right now.
okay, perfect. And we will read these off at the end of the workshop this evening.
And we'll give everybody about 15 seconds to respond to this poll. Thank you, everybody.
All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and move forward.
Let's give them, I will close the poll, and
I can go back
it
and,
looks like they're still rolling in, Matt, so we'll give them a couple more seconds before I close it.
okay, absolutely. Yeah, and for those who join maybe a bit later, we can always go back, I think, and come back to these slides.
Great,
Or,
I'm going to close it now.
yeah, I guess when you close them, we can't quite go back, right? So, okay. All right. Well, with that, we'll move into the inventory overview. So last presentation, we did talk about the overall parks within the city. Just to recap that, there are really 10 parks within the city. And within one of those parks really is a recreational community center, and that is on the north end of the city at Potrero Heights Park. And we do know that there are you know, a few parks within the community that are in adjacent cities, but we're really focusing on the parks within the city itself here. Overall, there's about 209, almost 210 total acres of parkland. And the largest parks in the community, as you may know, are Grant Ray Park, Montebello City Park, and then kind of in a tie there is really Ashia and Acuna Park. Just touch on some NRPA standards. NRPA just recently completed a comprehensive performance review that documented really 24 of the most critical park and recreational metrics collected from the NRPA park metric database. So this is a little infographic showing this. You know, there's a lot of good information there. And so we use that actually as a benchmark with your community and look at some of the amenities, look at some of the things that are happening nationally. But we're also looking at neighboring cities and how you benchmark against those. So that will be shown in the final master plan, and it is something that we work into some of our recommendations here. So here's a couple of figures that are shown in this report. This one on the left is acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. And you can see here, based on the city's population of 50,000 to about 100,000, that a median, you know, kind of parkland per acre average would be 7.7. In the lower quartiles, about 4.7, and in the upper quartiles, about 17.1, which is quite large. But that's, again, nationally. As we look at this a little bit more locally, that may change there. Miles of trails on the right-hand side, again, looking at the size of Montebello, median for that is about 15 miles, lower quartile is about 4 miles, and then upper would be about 28.5. Here's a summary of the typical park amenities. One thing to note about this graph is that on the right-hand side, it's a little misleading, but the right-hand side is actually indicating that for every about 3,000 to 4,000 folks that there's a playground. And this again is a benchmark nationally. And so as you go all the way to the left-hand side, looking at diamond fields and specifically adult baseball at diamond fields, there's about 63 or 1 per 63,000 residents. So this is a good way to kind of gauge how many amenities are within the city based on population. Another way to look at it is actually a kind of quantitative way of how many playgrounds are there, or elements really across the board are there in cities nationwide. So about 95% or somewhere in that range have playgrounds. Just below 90%, maybe 87% or so have basketball courts, etc. So again, that's a good way to kind of gauge where your community falls within that. It's one metric that we use. Again, we're benchmarking amongst cities in the neighborhood there as well. So we'll share that with our final workshop. So with that, we're going to jump into the second poll question. Jacob, are you ready to launch that one?
Yes, man, I am ready when you are.
All right, I'll go ahead and read it off. So what amenity do you feel that the city is most lacking in? Is it A, baseball or softball fields, B, soccer fields, C, playgrounds, or D, trails? We know that there's a lot of other options, but we just want to hear on those 4 there. We do know that there's a bit more attention on those 4 elements based on some of the feedback we've heard thus far. So with that, I'll leave it up for a few seconds and let folks answer there.
And we do want to emphasize that our attention isn't just on these short poll questions, that both the random survey and the version, the more extended version that's available to anyone in the city online to fill out, covers all the different topic areas. And these are just some simple sample poll questions to kind of get a flavor where some of these topic areas are coming from. So you will have opportunities to provide plenty of input in the future on some additional surveys as well.
Great, I will go ahead and close it right now. Thanks everybody for participating.
All right. Perfect. So moving on to our third topic tonight, we want to talk about the geographic distribution and equity. So we've been doing a lot of maps. Sylvia from our team and a few of our GIS folks have been working hard behind the scenes here. And I thank them for all their hard work. We do want to show some of this this work that they've done here this evening. So on the left-hand side, you'll see there's this is what you call a park shed map, and this is actually showing a half-mile radius of parks with residential. And one thing we do want to note is that the really these shapes that you see here, these kind of amorphic shapes, respond to the really the walkable streets and the street network within the city. So you'll see some other maps that use more of a radial type shape around these parks. We found that those may be slightly misleading because really what you're looking at are these drive time, walk times that react to our urban infrastructure. Can't really quite, I guess you could, if you had some superpowers, just fly right to a park, but this is a little bit more reactive to how we interface with our built canvas around us. So on the left-hand side, you will see that the residential does indicate kind of where more so the parks are serving residents versus just some open areas or industrial areas, commercial areas, etc. So do keep that kind of as a snapshot as we look at some of these other maps. On the right-hand side, you will see the same map, but with schools in there. And one thing we do want to emphasize there is that, yes, some of those gray blocks are industrial commercial, but some of them are actual school areas there. And, as we start to evolve and look at some of the recommendations, we may explore some joint use facilities and the ability to use some of that parkland, which is specifically important in what we found urban neighborhoods where really those joint use facilities can help supplement some of the parkland there. And on these series of maps, we're showing park acres within a 10-minute walk on the left-hand side. So as you see on the bottom right of each of these maps, there's a little legend here. So the colors here indicate how many park acres are within a 10-minute walk, meaning if you live somewhere here within Whittier Boulevard and you're near Montebello City Park, you're going to have somewhere upwards of 16 to 25 park acres, because that's reflecting the size of City Park there. Likewise for Grant Ray Park, there are some unique zones where there are some parks that overlap, and you do get the benefit of being within a 10-minute walk to either park there. And there's a similar instance here by Dutcher Tot Lot where you have some overlap. On the right-hand side, we're showing park acres within a 5-minute bike ride. What is unique there is that a 5-minute bike ride is somewhat synonymous to what you would kind of experience if you got in the car. So, on the left-hand side, that's reflective of kind of a comfortable walking time. Most people would, take on if they're wanting to go visit a park and just want to walk. However, we do know that sometimes it's likely to jump in a car and go to a park. So this is a little bit more reflective to that. We do encourage active living, at least within K2A, and I know the city is as well. And looking at really a bike ride, there is a lot more access throughout the city. So again, using that same kind of color range there, so yellow being the least amount up to the darker green being the most, you do get a lot more access there when you look at a 5-minute bike ride time. These series of maps here show park acres within a 10-minute walk. Again, a little bit of a cleaner overlay there, just without some of the other elements in there. And it shows kind of a color graph there. So another way to look at it. And again, these will be in the final master plan, but they're also very helpful for us as we're starting to put together recommendations for the city and looking at areas where more parkland may be needed to help serve the city there. This is another way to look at it, which is the number of parks within a 10-minute walk or a number of parks within a 5-minute bike ride. On the left-hand side, you'll see that, again, within a certain yellow zone there, you may be able to access one park within a 10-minute walk. If you do live in some areas there that have an overlap, you may have access to 2 parks within a 10-minute walk. And likewise for the 5-minute bike ride, there is a lot more overlap in that instance. You do have some areas where the darker colors come into play, and you get really three parks within a 5-minute bike ride. And then the last series of maps here are looking at kind of the demographics within the city. This again is helpful when we start to look at amenities. And there are some amenities that seem to resonate a bit more with other age groups. So, pickleball, for instance, may be something that's explored more so within the population over 65, whereas skate parks and some of those more active uses may be a little bit more amenable to folks within the 10 to 24 age range, whereas tot lots and whatnot may be for folks that are under 10. So this is kind of showing the array here. On the left-hand side is really population under 10, which you'll see is more so kind of in the middle of the city towards the south end. Population 10 to 24, again, kind of middle of the city, south end. You do get some areas here near Acuna Park. And then population over 65, you do start to see that a bit more in the northern end of the city there. Again, we do know that, not every part of the city here is residential. So, again, kind of take that into account when we show that first map with the residential. We'll have to kind of subtract those areas from there. But this again gives us a good snapshot of where those demographics lie within the city. So with that, we'll go into our third poll question. And Jacob, let me know when you're ready for that. I'll go ahead and read it off.
All yours, Matt. Go for it.
All right. So how do you typically get to the park you visit most frequently? And this is going again to the series of maps that we just showed, but is that A, walking or jogging? Excuse me, jogging. B, bike riding or hopping on the bike and getting there. C, driving. Or D, using public transportation. Again, I'll leave this up for a few seconds here and then we'll keep going.
While you're finishing up on that, just one of the items I wanted to mention is a common method these days is to try to find or try to provide parks within a 10-minute walk in neighborhoods. It's kind of a trend throughout the country to see how close your populations are to parks with that goal of at least either a mini park or a neighborhood park close by, and a community park that may actually be a little bit further, may require you a little bit further to get to. And sometimes those are citywide type facilities or programs. Whereas your neighborhood park, the goal is to try to get most of your population within a 10-minute or a 15-minute walk of these neighborhood parks.
Yes, great point there, Mike. We did show that a little bit in the first workshop, the difference between the park categories there. But as Mike mentioned, really within the neighborhood park, you do want to have that 10-minute walk time. And some of those amenities would include like playgrounds, just open fields, trails, things like that, maybe a basketball court, whereas some of the more community or regional type parks may have other facilities like aquatic type of facilities, skate parks, things like that, that are a little bit more high intensity and higher cost, and may warrant a little bit more of a public transit or drive time to get to them.
And another thing to add to that is we also have some tables available from last workshop. A number for the 10-minute walk time park shed is that it's capturing about 60% of population within the city. And when it's 1 mile, which is the 5-minute bike shed, its coverage would almost cover the entire city. So when you bike, that actually opens up a lot of the recreational opportunities. So that's the point, kind of part of the point there.
And also, when we talk about the different modes of accessing, we realize that still most people do drive to parks. The walking is generally like 2.5 miles per hour for walking. It takes into account some stoplights you might run into. Biking is generally about 12.5 miles an hour. Obviously, some cyclists can do double that and some a little bit slower, but we take the lower end of that. But the driving time typically in comparison to the 5-minute 5-minute bike ride is really about 2.5 minutes of driving time with a little bit of time for getting in your car or at the end of your destination finding a parking spot. So we're not saying that bike riding is as fast as driving, but by the time you get to a car, back out, find your way to the park, and then find a spot to park there, you lose some time in that time frame. But usually, I think it's pretty safe to say that most of the parks in the city would be within a 5-minute drive time as well.
Yep, all great points. Thank you both for adding to that. And Jacob, how are we looking on this third poll question? Maybe able to move forward.
You're ready to go, Matt. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so with that, we'll go into our visual preference survey. And I'm going to show just kind of generally what we're talking about, and then I'll switch over to a screen where we can actually take a look at that. So what we're doing, really, the goal here is to kind of gauge the community, gauge you all, and kind of see what your preferences are. So for instance, on the left-hand side, you may say, oh, well, I like a pump track the most. That's going to be my #1 choice. Whereas, maybe a children's playground is kind of my second choice. Pickleball courts may fall kind of lower on the list, etc. This is subjective. It's meant to be subjective, and that's why we want to hear it. We really want to see what your preference is so that we can use that and factor that into, how we can build a better park network for the community. On the right-hand side is a demonstration of what I'll show you here, but it's essentially the ranking. So with that said, I'm going to jump over to that slide, and we will give a slide demo for that. So when you launch into it, you'll see a little bit here, just questionnaire on, where you live, what your relationship is to Montebello. I put in my zip code, so that's a little different, but, you may say, if you're an employee, student, business owner, resident, I'll say visitor in this case. Are there students in your household? I do have a child who's in school, so I'll just say yes there, and then you can write the name, and then following which of the following groups identifies your age. So that would be mine there. Be able to move forward. I guess I have to add a comment there, so I'm going to say no. All right, so then this launches us into the actual preference survey here. So there's two ways of doing this, and I did want to show this because it is kind of it is a little nuanced there, and I'll show you in a second. So if I did say, again, I'll go down to that example where I did say, oh yeah, I really like well, I guess in this case, multi-purpose field. I'll click #1 there, and you can go through. You could kind of pick your choices by just going and clicking on these arrows and then ranking them. Or another way of doing it is actually just grabbing. You'll see there's this little icon here with 4 arrows, and that will allow you to drag and kind of drop your preference in place. You will see once you do that your rankings did show up in those correct orders. So just keep an eye on that, and it's kind of, it's one of those things to maybe go back through and just make sure it kind of captures what your intended input was. In the second category here, I'll just do it by way of dragging and dropping. So in this case, I may say, okay, I really want a multi-purpose turf area. I'm going to pull this up, and then you may have to scroll up a little bit more, and I'm just going to pull it up to the top of the list. And there you'll see it goes into the #1 spot, and then all the other elements drop into the subsequent categories there. So I'll do the same with the community garden. I'm going to just move it up, and then try to get into the second spot there, and you'll see it snaps to #2. So there's two ways of doing it. Really, use either one. You may find that once you're putting in the numbers that it's not snapping to where you want it. And the interesting thing there is that if you were to move one of these, it will kind of do that for you. So, again, we realize there is a little bit of a nuance to it, but that's why it's good to kind of go back through and then just check your numbers again. So anyways, that's the demonstration. We do have to read, and it is translated over in Spanish as well. So there's an option right when you start it to actually select either English or Spanish, and then you can continue through the survey in either manner. Is there anything else to add to that, Jacob?
No, you covered it well.
All right, perfect.
And I guess if I may, the survey will be set to where it can only be taken once per device. So if you're living in a household of multiple people, we encourage you to have each individual member complete it on their individual phone or iPad or laptop, because that way we control the number, so we don't have anybody like abuse the survey. So I think that's important to remind people of. Other than that, thank you, Matt. That was a good walkthrough.
Yeah, and thanks for that reminder there as well. But we do encourage, if there's multiple folks in a household, to, each one can fill out a survey there. It's really based on, everybody that is living there in the community. So we want to hear from you. And that's really where the statistically valid survey kind of differs a bit, where that is really based on, all these measures to allow it to be valid there. And that really helps us as we start to document things to really understand, where the community falls on some of these topics.
Now, I'd add to clarify a little bit that the reason why we're doing multiple surveys here is that the Prop 68 grant is going to be due in December. We need to start getting some input on priorities. However, the statistically valid survey and then the follow-up open link survey, the results of those probably won't be back for a month and a half, potentially from now. So these are just some quick ones. They're not meant to be comprehensive for all items that are possible in a park. Rely on the online version of the full survey when that comes out. The random survey gets mailed out to individuals that were picked to be part of the statistically correct survey, but then probably about a week after that hits the street, there'll be an open link survey where you'll get emailed to you the link to get into that particular website. So we do keep the results separate from each other, the statistically correct version, because those are randomly picked and they may include people who don't normally use parks. However, usually people who go and search out a survey to fill out are likely to be more interested in parks in the first place. That's why they're motivated to take the survey. And then we compare the two with each other, and it helps to calibrate where the interested individuals involved in Park and Rec, what they feel, and then the general public that's been randomly selected. So again, don't worry about if there's not something on this list of your preferred favorite element. That subsequent survey will be the more important and accurate one for that purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yes, great point, Mike. Thank you. All right, so with that, we will kind of launch into the end of our presentation this evening, and with some closing remarks, get you on your way here. So ways to participate. The next public workshop is anticipated to be mid-October, mid-October, and we will release the exact date here probably in the coming weeks. Please do check with the city website for additional events and the project products and surveys, and then leave us your email address, and we will be sure to keep you really up to speed on everything that's coming and all the engagement events and milestones of the project. And then as Mike mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, please look out for that survey in the mail. It's not really distributed to all residents. So if you didn't get it, don't be shocked or alarmed that you didn't. That is for a reason there. And then the story map will actually have that survey as well, so you can go there and then visit our project story map. So I will very quickly jump over to that again just to show that on screen. So I did show this a little bit more in depth during the first workshop, but just to show you again, the story map is a great really resource there throughout this process to allow you to take a look and kind of see, what's happening with the project. We do update it periodically throughout the project. So we do give a little bit of a project overview, and then we are hosting the workshop information on there as well. So there's links to it. We do have some information about, in this case, the second workshop. We do have a recording of the first workshop in there, and then there's a demonstration of how you can actually participate and drop in some comments within the story map here. So this is a very exciting tool where you can actually go in and then add in some information in there, and then we'll take that into account as well with our final recommendation. So we would certainly encourage everybody on the line here today to visit that, as well as share that with your friends and family, and participate there, so that we can take your goals and your visions and really listen to you throughout this process, so that we can better serve the community there at large. So with that said, I will.
Matt, can you actually show how you drag an icon over and zoom in on it? I think it's worthwhile to to show that, and how a person can enter their address too if they wish to.
Absolutely. Yep, we can do that. Yeah, so I will, I'll just go ahead and drop one of these pins here and kind of show, kind of how this works. So, I'm zooming in here to City Park, and there's some comment points here that you can actually pick from that allow you to put some input there. So the list really is access, amenities, safety, lighting, maintenance, program, and then other, which is kind of anything there. And so in this case, I'll go ahead and select maybe safety and just select and drop that on and show how you can leave some information. So you have to click it once and then click it again on the map itself, and then you can put a comment on there. So this comment may be there's a loose dog or something like that. Maybe it's more related to your perception of safety or something along those lines. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that one so it doesn't take that. But then you could take like a maintenance item and actually drop that as well and say, well, the trash can is full. Maybe a little, it may seem like there's some items there that are a little picky choosy, but we want to hear that, and it just helps us provide some more recommendations, and it certainly helps the city prioritize some funding and better serve the community there. So anyways, you can actually change it in here as well. So if you click on maintenance, but oh gosh, I meant to say program or something else, you can change that, and you still have that ability to do that. So I'll go ahead and close out of there. There is a way to put your address in there as well, and if you click on this home icon, let's see, may not know how to do that. Maybe Sylvia, you can.
Yeah, I changed the layout. I actually need to add that function.
Oh, okay. Okay, well that did change. Okay, that's why I wasn't finding it there on the fly. But I guess if you're aware of kind of the crossing streets there, this is a live map. You can zoom in and the streets will populate, so you will be able to see there, kind of more so where you may live and the parks there. Those are all labeled, so you'll be able to see under kind of the green area there what the park name is. And you will see there are some comments in there already, so you can actually see what other people are leaving and kind of add on to those comments. Again, this is a great snapshot. We really like to hear just generally what your perception of the parks are there in the city, and ultimately it just helps them be improved throughout this process here. So with that, I will go ahead and kind of close out and just remind everybody about the schedule here again. We are launching into our third workshop. We do apologize. There was some delay on some, obviously some of the COVID restrictions, but we do appreciate everybody attending this live webinar here as well as watching it if you happen to see it afterwards. And we just thank you for participating, and we encourage you to continue to participate. Please be on the lookout for some other events and meetings and things like that. Again, visit the website, stay involved, leave your email, and we'll be sure to stay connected with you. So with that, are there any questions or comments? Maybe Jacob, you've seen some that have come in. We're certainly happy to answer some of those. We do have the city staff available as well to answer some questions.
Thank you, Matt. Yes. In the general chat window, I don't see any comments, but under the questions,
all right.
There is a comment here that says, unfortunately, I thought it was going to be also about how to have more family activities like the City of Commerce does. So maybe reminding, it's helpful to remind people that these Parks Master Plans is not just infrastructure, but it's also recommendations for programs. So if you or the city would like to elaborate on that, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I could touch on that. So thank you for that comment. And, that is certainly a part of this as well. As we kind of touched on this evening, a lot of these elements do kind of play into the actual programming of the the various elements within the city there. We do actually have our consultant Greenplay looking at those very closely. They have done this across the nation, and they are going to be analyzing the programs there and providing recommendations on how to increase certain programs and make certain things available for community members. So, thank you so much for that feedback. We didn't touch on that specifically this evening. We may in a future workshop, but that is definitely being taken into account.
And both the random survey and the online survey that's available asks a lot of questions relative to programs as well. So we'll be able to provide your input there as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Matt, if we can, from the city aspect, I think Mike answered it correctly. We just want to encourage the folks there to please take the survey. If you didn't receive it at the home of one of the 4,500 random addresses, please feel free to leave the comments here. And I think the team here could take those comments and save them for us. If there's specific comments as well, like about the type of programming, I believe we are looking at some of our neighboring cities and what they do. So yeah, please fill out the survey online and make that known. Part of this process is that we'd like to hear that feedback in those specific items, or if it was just general, we'll look at what our neighboring cities have to offer and see what makes sense for our community. So we appreciate that comment. Thank you.
We have some additional comments. If you'd like me to read them off, Matt. One of them is if we can please share the link to the survey, and I think it'd be good if we could copy paste that into the chat window. So if you still have that link open, Matt, feel free to drop it in right there. If not, I'll get to it momentarily. We also have a comment that speaks about, can we have walking trails that are padded? I don't know if you wanted to talk about, materials, whether padded walking trails is something that would be feasible. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. I guess to clarify on that, padded trails being just the surface treatment, is that?
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, please leave that comment and feedback throughout the various means and ways to do it there. There are several ways of treating trails. There could be DG trails, asphalt, etc. I will say padded trails are something that's a little bit more maintenance and cost intensive, but that is something that could be included. Usually you will see those in more of an enclosed environment, such as in a recreational facility or a gym, where there's some type of padded surface, or in actually a professional like track field or something like that. Myself, I actually ran track, and actually in high school there was kind of a dirt field, but when I got into the college level, there's more of a padded type field there. So there are those surfaces, but they're more expensive, and there's a little bit more maintenance.
In an outdoor environment, we generally class things as hard surface, firm surface, and soft surface. So soft surface can be gravel, dirt, DG that's not compacted, but under firm surface, you can take decomposed granite and other materials and basically glue them together. That's called emulsifying, and it makes it firm for you to be able to walk on, but it's still softer than asphalt or concrete. And for ADA access requirements for wheelchairs or just anyone with a physically impaired ability to move through an area, needs to at least be a firm surface or a hard surface. So we always have to make sure our areas are available for full ADA accessibility wherever it's possible. So that's generally the three categories, but a padded surface would probably be in the soft surface category, and it probably wouldn't meet ADA requirements. It just depends on how resilient it is and whether a wheelchair could actually use it. If it's, I know as myself as a runner and as a walker, you get a lot more feet fatigue on a hard surface than you do on a firm surface, but sometimes the soft surface is just sometimes difficult to get through. So firm is sometimes often the preferred surface when you're trying to look at something in between those two extremes.
Thank you both. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, great comment.
The next comment we have received is, just more marked and assigned bike lanes throughout the city. So I think that would definitely help with, the connection, the transportation part of being able to walk and bike to your local park. So thank you for sharing that comment with everybody and the attendance. And another thing too is just the support for jogging trails in the parks throughout Montebello is something that was also shared. So another great thing. So please, if in all of the surveys that you participate in, feel free to just remind us and make that comment as well so we can keep track of that. I guess there was a clarification on like the padded surface, and in quotes we have clarification as cushiony. So I think I can relate because whenever I'm walking near a playground that has the padded material, I always go out of my way to just for those few seconds walk on that material. But it is difficult in a larger outdoor environment for these longer trails to use that material. That they are usually focused around those smaller concentrated areas like playgrounds. But thank you again though for making those comments and sharing them with everybody.
And the padded surfaces in a playground are both for improving safety, but also for ADA access, so a person in a wheelchair can get to the actual recreation amenity. They've actually kind of slightly fallen out of favor, mainly because maintenance-wise, they don't seem to last as long as they were promised. And so they tend to crack and have to be replaced. So they do have their place, especially in playground settings. In other places that they probably won't last much more than 3 or 4 or 5 years before they start having some maintenance issues.
Great, thanks for clarifying.
So,
if you have, I can keep going, Matt, if that's okay with you, just reading the comments out loud in case they're not visible to everybody else. We have a comment regarding seating. Seating and benches have corroded at Henry Acuna Park and have not been replaced. Is there a plan to add more benches? So maybe you or the city can reply to this.
Yeah, I think I'll hand that over to the city. I think that's a valuable comment there, and certainly something we'll take into account. But maybe David, you can touch on that comment.
Yeah, sure can. Thanks for handing it off. So yes, we did receive actually. We have an app, a My Montebello app, where folks could report maintenance issues. So there was a bench that was removed that has been ordered to be replaced, and I think you actually see it in the next coming weeks. If there's anything else, we now take that comment here on a here and now, not wait for the end of the park master plan. That's more of a daily maintenance issue, and we'll have a look at that immediately. So thank the attendee for that comment, so we can take care of that. Thank you.
Great. And then the last one too, for you all, and so Dave, if you could stay online, you may be able to answer this as well. The comment is, we have seen several trees die from diseases. Is Montebello suffering from some sort of plague? This has added to the lack of shady areas at Henry Acuna Park.
Well, we're not aware of a plague specifically. There are several trees at Acuna Park that are very old, very tall, 40, 50 feet, pine trees, eucalyptus trees, etc. We have planted new trees. If you look out, there's a few stemmed up, staked up ones up there. We're building another park right now at Taylor Ranch, and we planted 17 trees there. So there's no plan to remove trees actively, but sometimes when they become deceased or it's in the best interest for safety, such as one we had to take out at Sanchez Adobe for the safety of the park attendees. But we do have kind of an unofficial policy where we do replant a tree in their place, or as near as we can. So no, there's no plague or disease specifically for trees at Acuna Park.
The two diseases.
Oh, go for it, Mike. I think.
Yeah, two diseases that are kind of common in Southern California. There's some palm diseases, especially Canary Island palms, that are really wiping out a lot of those type of trees. Those are the ones with a very big head on the top of them. They're very large, massive date palms, basically. And then sudden oak disease. If you have oaks around, in some cases, a lot of those are dying off. And then usually pines, they do get a borer beetle if they've been stressed, either based on age or drought conditions. So most likely that's not the case in city parks because there's usually enough water to go around in the soil from irrigation systems. But in drier areas, a lot of times during drought conditions, a lot of trees are falling prey to like a borer beetle that will take them out at that point. But those are the most common ones you see around here in Southern California, but they're probably not the ones that you're seeing in the parks where you're seeing some trees die.
Yeah, and to touch on that, there is a shot hole borer that was introduced about, I would say about 8 or 10 years ago, that is actually causing quite a devastation to several trees in Southern California. Some crop trees, such as avocados, but also some park trees like ash and other type of park trees there. So it's a new pest in the kind of ecosystem within Southern California. There's really no predator that's kind of taken them out. So it's really requiring cities and agencies to be very prudent. Arborists know how to look out for them, but it's a hard thing to catch. And with the droughts and some of the heat waves and things like that, it can be a double-edged sword there. So that's a great comment. We are seeing that, and I think in every community, and it's it's quite sad, but it's good to hear that the city is planting new trees. That is, I think sometimes just the life cycle of things, but there are some pests and things like that that are putting a shorter lifespan on trees.
Great. And everybody, we have one last comment / question, and that is there consideration to fence off parks and close them in the evenings and open them back up in the morning?
I think I'll hand that back over to David, see if there's anything currently.
No, currently there's no plans to lock or close off any parks. Those are assessments we can make if there's a safety concern, if that's where the question's coming from. I'm not too sure, but we pride a lot of our community parks to be open to the public, and obviously hope that folks respect the fact that they do close at 10 o'clock. And again, I'm not assuming that's where the question was coming from, but no, there isn't a plan to answer the question. To lock off or fence off parks at this time. But if new parks are constructed or changes are made, those are obviously options that some cities do. We don't have any parks that are fenced off right now completely. We have portions like of baseball fields, etc. So I hope that answered the questions best without knowing the specific location, but that's not a plan at this time.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
So I think maybe we go to the poll questions and give kind of a response or overview of what we've heard.
Oh, by the way, Matt, the story map, the map survey has been updated. If you want to show the how to put in address, but just so you know, it's up and running.
Very efficient there, yeah. Let me try it again here. Yeah, do it within a matter of minutes. Yeah, thank you for doing that. Okay, so here you go. So you can actually input your address on the top right here, and then it'll zoom into a specific area there. So there's that feature. Thank you, Sylvia, for reactivating that.
By the way, there's also a locate where you are button, where you are clicking. Although don't click it now, but when you're actually there on your phone, that may help. Or like at home, that may help you locate yourself.
Yeah, there you go. Great point. And it's nice to see those features there as well.
Thank you.
So thanks for doing it, Sylvia. All right.
Matt, I am ready to share the results. So one poll question at a time when you're ready.
All right. I'll do the drum roll.
Here we go. So for the first question, 22%, it was pretty even across all 4 options. 22% digital reservation system with a shared calendar. 22% voted for more fields. 33 was the score for more lighted fields and night play. And again, back down to 22% for joint use fields with local school district. So definitely more lighting at field and night play got the larger support for this first poll question.
Nice.
Great. And would you like me to move on to the second question?
Sure. Yep, I'll pull it over here as well.
Excellent. And so this question was, what amenity do you feel that the city is most lacking in? And if you can see everybody on your screen, you'll see that soccer fields received 33%, but most of the people who joined us tonight voted for trails. So 67% received that vote for that. Again, this supports that the fact and the statistics that we see across Southern California and the country that walking, biking, and just general trails are always a highly requested amenity throughout our communities.
And probably even more after COVID, as everyone's run out of places to walk to, I think, in their neighborhoods, as they've had more time and more desire to get out and see some things and fresh air.
Definitely. And now for the last poll question, we had, how do you typically get to the park that you visit most frequently? It's pretty split between walking and driving. So 38% voted for walk/jog, 25% of you voted bicycling, 38% driving, and nobody online today selected public transportation. So walking and driving.
This is much higher than you would expect in some other cities. So it does say something about both your residents wanting to walk and the ability to walk with a more walkable street grid network, I think is what it's saying on this, at least for those that took the poll tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's quite a bit that walk or bike to these parks, and that's exciting to see. We certainly encourage the active living and active lifestyles, and I think that plays into the greater role that parks play for our communities in allowing for these healthy lifestyles that we all aspire for. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for reading those off. If there aren't any other comments or questions, I think, with that, we'll thank you again for attending tonight's workshop. And, we do want to encourage you again to participate in, the various things that we mentioned there, the survey that will either go out to you by mail, or if not, you'll have a link that you can participate in. Again, the story map, and then the visual preference survey that we shared this evening.
Mm-hmm. And everybody who registered for this webinar, your email information is registered within our database. So we will be following up with you with some of the miscellaneous website links that Matt mentioned earlier. And again, we'd like to remind you, keep an eye out on the city's social media and website for that mid-October workshop. If everybody who joined us today could tell one or two other people, I think we can have a pretty spectacular last citywide workshop. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. All right, I think we'll sign off.
Great.
Thanks, everybody, and have a great, be safe out there.
Bye, everybody.
Are we no longer live there, Jacob?
1 second.